Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Refugee Matter series. Today's topic is focused on the 1 year anniversary of the Afghan evacuation. We will be discussing how NGOs are responding to the evacuation since last August. We will provide legal updates on the Afghan Adjustment Act, how cities are responding, and local organizing wins for the Afghan community. I'm moderating today's sessions, and my name is Naveed Saifi. I am the English instructor Afghan for the Afghan newcomers at National Partnership for New Americans. We at NPNA are working and have several programs and campaigns to ensure that we advance the immigrants' equity and agenda at the state, local, and federal level. With the arrival of almost 94,000 Afghans in the US, there has been a growing demand for English classes. This is why we launched our English as a gateway program for the Afghan newcomers, where we do not only teach English, but help them to learn about the US history and culture, civic engagement, and introduce them with people that can further help them to integrate smoothly in the US. I myself am an immigrant who arrived in the US last November, and I see how these programs that are aimed toward the newcomers make a big difference by helping them become independent. And today I am joined by some amazing guests. Allow me to introduce my guests. My first guest is David Malikyar, who is an Afghan welcoming and housing navigator for Cherla. Another guest is Mohammad Naeem. He is the senior manager, strategy and partnership at American Immigration Council. We also have Chrysalis Reis, Chief Resilient Officer at the City of Tulsa Office of the Mayor. We also have Fatima Saidi, Development and Relations Manager at Maine Immigrant Rights Coalition, or MERC. And lastly, we have Tobin Williamson, Advocacy Manager, Maine Immigrants Rights Coalition. In order to kick off today's conversation, we will be starting out with our first guest speaker, Mr. David. David, our first question is, how has the state and organizers has been responding to the needs of the housing crisis in California? David, we do not have your voice. If you can.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for that information, Naveed, and welcome my fellow speakers. Very good question, and the answer, I guess, to that would be, as we know, California is at the forefront of immigration-friendly states, and California has set into place programs that will definitely add more layers and support for the population. There are programs such as the Afghan Support and Investment Program, or ASIP, which is a very, very important program and is doing a lot of good work for our population out there. We also have Afghan Integrated Resettlement Services, or ARIS program. In addition to that, there's the Afghan Support Community Program, or ASC. These programs can easily serve as models for other states. As an example, the ASIP program has been a game changer for many, many families. The program adds more support to our clients and our community members in transitioning them over to more permanent housing and stability. In addition to that, I just want to point out, and I'm sure that we're all in agreement with this, housing just remains a big challenge, not only in the city of Los Angeles, but the entire state of California. And I could even say, through my talks and connections with folks throughout the United States, this seems to be a really, really big issue the whole country over. So I would say that California is very friendly, and they're doing a lot of good work and have come up with these programs. As an example, the ASIP program is a program that is specific to the state of California and has been put forth by the Office of the Governor. So, quite a few programs out there, Naveed, to support our community members that have recently joined us. Back to you,
Thank
Naveed.
you very much. Thank you. My second question from you would be, How has the coalition responded, and how will you continue to respond?
Again, that's a really good question. Jumping into action during times like this requires a lot of coordination, not to mention like-minded people and good hearts. So California's jumped into, doing better work and getting out there by, as an example, the Office of Emergency Management here in the County of Los Angeles has sponsored spaces and sponsored task force calls to support populations and our newly arrived folks. And this is a space that's been created so that all partners can be in the same space and have the same information given to them. The calls are moderated by the state, but we have organizations, resettlement organizations that are on this call. We have nonprofit organizations that are on this call. We have school districts, Department of Public Social Services, the mayor's office in a lot of instances. And so what these folks are doing is trying to coordinate and support and finally help navigate newly arrived populations here. And they will continue to do this for the near future. We're seeing positive results as a result of these calls, because we can then share the same space and air out any problems that we may have, and also build the coalition, who can fit what service where. So we sort of make that bridge and try to be able to make that connection that folks need. CHIRLA continues, the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights Los Angeles continues to advocate for not only what I mentioned earlier, but we strongly advocate for streamlining and making available more pro bono services. As we know, once we deal with housing, this is going to be the next stop. So to that end, we have made sure to reach out to many different organizations in Los Angeles. I've knocked on a lot of doors and will continue to do so, and I'm sure we all are, to make sure that the support and the help in the pro bono area is available for these people. And I cannot emphasize enough about the importance of the Afghan Adjustment Act. And I know that my colleague Muhammad will speak about it in more detail a little bit later. But this is a clear-cut path to legal permanent residency without having to jump multiple hurdles to get there, not to mention overburdening the already backlogged immigration system. So I think that all of this work will definitely be reflective, and hopefully later on this fall, the Afghan Adjustment Act would be something that would be passed to make sure that the clearer pathway is available for the population that needs to have this sort of help. And also, as I said, it will lighten the backup and the backlog that the system is already experiencing. Naveed, back to you, please.
Thank you, David. I think you mentioned a very important point, and also the Afghanistan Adjustment Act. That's why we today have invited Muhammad Naeem, who is the Senior Manager, Strategy and Partnership at the American Immigration Council. And our question to Muhammad Naeem is, can you please provide a legislative update on the Afghan Adjustment Act and what's coming up ahead? Sorry, Muhammad Naeem, if you can unmute yourself, please.
There you go. First of all, thank you, Naveed John, for the introduction, and really great to be with you all, sort of colleagues who've been working on this issue of providing support to Afghan refugees for the better part of the last year. My name is Muhammad Naeem. I work as a Senior Manager for Strategy and Partnerships at the American Immigration Council. And for the better part of the last year, I've been working alongside my colleagues on the EOA Coalition, specifically sort of those of us who've been working on the Legislative Committee, working with members of Congress to get the Afghan Adjustment Act introduced. I thought it would be helpful to just give a brief background as to the introduction and then what it means for Afghans who have found themselves paroled into the United States, and Afghans who still find themselves in Afghanistan or in third country sites. And then what are the legislative vehicles that this act can pass by? So the Afghan Adjustment Act is in a way, historic. It's a bipartisan piece of legislation in both the House and the Senate. On the Senate side, it was introduced by co-sponsors Senator Klobuchar, Senator Lindsey Graham, Senator Chris Kroon, Senator Roy Blunt, Senator Richard Blumenthal, and Senator Lisa Murkowski. These 6 senators came together and said, we have to make sure that we find permanence in security and safety, for the long term, for our Afghan friends and our Afghan allies and all evacuees. Following the U.S. military withdrawal from Afghanistan, tens of thousands of Afghans who had supported the U.S. military mission and at-risk Afghans were evacuated, as we all know, via humanitarian parole, which is a temporary allowance into the United States and can remain here for 1 or 2 years. Earlier this year, the Department of Homeland Security did provide temporary protected status, but that is time-limited status. And so the only way to resolve sort of the legal limbo that Afghans find themselves in, many of whom are thinking of filing for asylum, is only by way of a congressional action and by way of the Afghan Adjustment Act. And it's important to note that the Afghan Adjustment Act is patterned after similar adjustment acts passed following previous U.S. wartime evacuations, including for Cubans after the rise of Fidel Castro, for Southeast Asians after the fall of Saigon, and for Iraqi Kurds during the rule of Saddam Hussein. So what does the Afghan Adjustment Act do? What it will allow Afghan evacuees, for many of whom have found themselves in the United States, to receive permanence. They will receive a pathway towards permanent residency in the United States, and after that, hopefully citizenship, right? To sort of complete that trip the same way that my family completed it sort of many years ago. As my colleague, like David John had mentioned, it relieves the immediate burden on the SIV process program, which has a backlog of 70,000 applications currently, and the asylum process, which has a backlog of 1.4 million cases. And so I cannot overstate how important this is for Afghans all across this country who have begun their lives, who have started jobs, enlisted their kids in schools, really have just started to build life here in this country, but they don't have legal permanence. And the Afghan Adjustment Act does deliver that. Now, in terms of where the Afghan Adjustment Act is currently, right now, next month, Congress will be working on a continuing resolution that will be a legislative vehicle that that the Afghan Adjustment Act has a chance to be attached to and hopefully passed. So for many of you who find yourselves all across this country, make sure to get in touch with your members of Congress. This is an incredibly critical moment. We have about 4 to 5 weeks of making sure that we engage our members of Congress, particularly of those on the Senate, to ensure that our Afghan friends, our allies, and those who have found themselves here in the United States find real permanence. And one last point. The Afghan Adjustment Act is not simply about those who are in the United States. It also streamlines the SIV processing, as well as the processing for those who would qualify under the P1 and P2 protocols. That is really important because that ensures, in a way, that America honors its word to all those who supported the United States over the course of the last 2 decades. And so it's about Afghans here and it's about Afghans abroad who envision someday that they'll be reunited with their families, their mothers, their fathers, their sisters, their brothers, and other family members. So I'll pass it back to you, Navid John.
Thank you very much. This is a really, good news, and for people, even as I said earlier, that I'm also an immigrant, and I hope that, we will have, good progress on the Afghan Adjustment Act. Yeah. And one more question from you, Naim John. If you can just elaborate on what are some of the takeaways from the We Are All America Advocacy Days?
Yeah, so great question. I've been engaging with like members of Congress for the better part of the last year. And last week, I was very privileged to participate in a few meetings as part of the We Are All America Week. And I thought was so critical and so important was sort of constituents of districts all across sort of I was participating mostly in the state of Texas. And on that call, you had constituents of all backgrounds, faith leaders, veterans groups, veterans themselves, local community members. These are folks who saw firsthand how gracious, how hospitable sort of Afghans are and have been and will continue to be. They saw how hardworking so Afghan refugees have been since the moment that they arrived in this country. It's important to note, and in the meetings, this really was made clear to members of Congress, members of the Senate, particularly in the ones that I had participated in, that Afghans will earn their way in this country. And in the same way that my father and my mother earned their way in this country. And so the meetings themselves were so important at ensuring that the messages of our veteran leaders and our veteran communities, our faith leaders and our faith communities got to the Senate offices and the representatives that needed to hear them. And so it's that kind of collective effort of connecting community to our politics that's so incredibly important and will be so incredibly meaningful when the Afghan Adjustment Act does indeed pass. We will get it done. We will get it done.
Thank you very much, Mohammed Naeem. We also have here Crystal with us, who is the Chief Resilient Officer at the City of Tulsa, Office of the Mayor. Crystal, would you be able to describe how cities have been responding to the evacuation since last August?
Sure, and thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this discussion. And I sort of feel, I'm one person in the mayor's office, but the effort to resettle and support and include our Afghan newcomers has been a whole community effort. And so everyone from individuals who have just reached out to help, to our business community that has hired people, to our foundations who have stepped up to fill gaps, and of course our city departments that have also embraced and tried to welcome as much as possible a new community. So I'm just going to share kind of from the perspective of a city, like a municipality, and what we have done to increase inclusion and welcoming. And so the city of Tulsa was very fortunate. We have a welcoming plan. We are one of those cities that established a welcoming plan a few years ago. It's called our New Tulsans Initiative. And I would say that our plan is comprehensive and broad. It's 26 goals across different domains: civic engagement, public health, education, economic development, public safety. And we have goals within each of those domains. And we actually were able to just apply that plan to our new community. And so in the city of Tulsa, for those that may not know, we have an established resettlement community and resettlement agencies that at work. And we have a very large Myanmar refugee community that has been a wonderful part of the community and has established here in Tulsa. And so when we heard what we were going to be receiving and welcoming Afghan newcomers, that sort of system was already in place. Of course, we had to add much more and add more partners and be very creative in how we could house nearly 900 people now. That's our kind of total just in Tulsa. And in our sister city in Oklahoma City, they resettled a few more. So Oklahoma actually has resettled quite a few, relatively speaking, quite a few individuals. And so I would say the three things that our city and our municipality offers, because we don't provide direct service. So we don't provide or fund health and human service agencies directly, but we are a convener of and a connector, so of partnerships. So we have been convening resettlement partners, nonprofits, businesses, individuals, all along the way. When there's a kind of emerging issue, we can pull together different members of the community to address an issue. For example, the dearth of ESL classes. We convened a group to understand what we had and where the gaps were. When transportation came up, and we'll talk about challenges in a little bit, we convened a group to figure out the immediate solutions for that. And now, of course, as we all are probably convening groups to discuss our housing crunch. And for us in particular, we're going to be seeing a cliff effect from rental assistance that we were able to provide. The second thing that we do is we fill gaps. So those challenges that emerged, we are able to not only convene, but also figure out what are the resources we have at the city or that we could leverage to fill gaps, so in transportation or in housing. And then lastly, we've been able to secure grants and foundation funding to provide services, supports, assistance, and as well as securing some public dollars. So through our ARPA process, we're allocating some funds for supporting credential evaluation for internationally trained immigrants, which we know will help some of our newcomers as well. And so those are kind of the three areas that municipalities and our city have engaged in.
Thank you. And I would like to ask, same kind of question from Fatima Saidi. Fatima, can you please tell us how has the MERC responded to the evacuation since last August?
Hello everyone, Shom Bakhair, Barakallah. Before I answer that question, I wanted to say something, because when Muhammad was talking about Afghans are hardworking and they will prove, they will earn. I think we have earned, we have bleed for America. We have for 20 plus years, America owned it, this Adjustment Act to us. We don't have to prove our loyalty to America anymore. So this is our right. This is the right of all those people who have lost family members. So now going back, my name is Fatima Saidi. I am the Development and Relations Manager for Maine Immigrant Rights Coalition. So before answering that question, I think I have to say a little bit about Maine and how it is. So that would make sense when I'm answering.
Sure.
Maine is a very white state, one of the whitest states in the country. That means that there is not a lot of infrastructure built to support immigrants. So what happened last year when the fall of Kabul, unfortunately, on August 15 happened, we had a community gathering, a hearing. And there was not a lot of Afghans in the state of Maine. Most Afghans who came to Maine have been here since after the wall of the Soviet Union, so in the 80s. So these people have built lives, and then we had a very small group of Afghans who came after 2000. So those groups included myself and a few other Afghans. We still had families in Afghanistan. So this community hearing at the leadership of MERC, we just wanted to hear how we can support these individual Afghans who are here. They have families in Afghanistan. And then getting ready how to host Afghans. As I said, that Maine doesn't have the infrastructures to support a new community like Afghans. So we were successful creating the first Afghan Association of Maine, which has been really doing the backbone of work. And it's an ethnic organization. They are doing amazing job with the new Afghans that after October, they start arriving. And MERC has around over 90 plus member organization, and 3 of them really were doing the resettlement. So there was the Catholic Charities, the Jewish Community Alliance, and Maine Immigrant and Refugee Services. But at MERC, we were just overseeing a lot of these efforts, what's happening in the ground. And what we did, because over the years, with our experience, Maine is one of the states that we don't have refugee resettlement or any kind of resettlement at the state level. So that means that a lot of it really is at the shoulder of MERC, and we are doing the groundwork for it. Even though we are an advocacy organization, but we are doing a lot of our member organizations are doing the services. So I am very happy to say there is over more 400 Afghans that have arrived, and so we have now more 400 Afghans. And we finally, the other day I was walking down the street and there is a new Afghan restaurant that I'm very, very happy to see it. So
good to hear that, Fatima. Thank you very much. Tobin, as an advocacy manager with the Maine Immigrant Rights Coalition, can you share about MERC's advocacy work, especially about the Afghan Adjustment Act?
Yes, of course. So Fatima is a colleague of mine, and as she mentioned, we are a statewide coalition of about 90 different member organizations. And so for our advocacy efforts, which is really core to the mission of what we do, we work with those organizations to lift up policies and legislation that would enhance immigrant lives for a stronger Maine. And so, we work with those member organizations to talk to state legislators, to talk to our congressional staff and congressional delegation. As Mohammed mentioned earlier, Merck also participated in We Are All America's Refugee Advocacy Days last week. We met with members from Senator Collins's office. Maine is a pretty small state, so we only have 4 members of Congress, 2 senators and 2 U.S. representatives. And Merck has pretty good relationships with all of those offices. And so for advocacy with the Afghan Adjustment Act specifically, we're working with a number of our key coalition partners like ILAP, the Immigrant Legal Advocacy Project, the Afghan Association of Maine that Fatima mentioned earlier, as well as, the resettlement agencies, JCA and MIRS and Catholic Charities, to emphasize the importance of passing this act so that the 400 or so Afghans in Maine, plus the thousands across the country, can have some sort of stability moving forward and have an idea of what their long-term situation might look like. So we just work with our congressional staff. We encourage our member organizations and audience to call their members of Congress to lobby on behalf of this community. And we're a true coalition, and so we're only as strong as our member organizations, and we couldn't do it without them.
Thank you very much, Tobin. Crystal, once again, coming back to you, I would ask that what have been the challenges that the city has faced so far, and what kind of partnership has the city established as a response to tackle these challenges?
Sure. I mentioned a couple, but I'll share a little bit more detail on the transportation issue. So in Oklahoma and in Tulsa here, we don't have a vast network of public transportation. We do have a bus system, and we do have kind of other modes, but it's a very car-driven city. And so we have a wonderful business community that really hired a lot of our newcomers. And so but needing to, those newcomers needed to drive to get to those places of work. And so just to speak to like the amount of community effort and community generosity, there were people that were giving rides to people get to work at 5 in, or there were local volunteers that were driving people, case managers, and even the businesses. And I have to give, very some credit to the businesses. There's a local business that arranged to pick up individuals so that they could go to work. And these are great jobs with benefits and pay a great wage and are great opportunities. And they were able to hire cohorts of individuals. It's a big manufacturing business here, but that wasn't sustainable. And so kind of months into this process, this was a very much emerging issue because of the driver's license process. To access a driver's license, practice and study for the exam, which in Oklahoma isn't offered in any other language other than English, because it is a state service, and many other states probably experience that same barrier. And so when this emerged as an issue, we convened our resettlement agencies, our local nonprofit organization that provides rides to individuals who to go to their appointments if they're affiliated with a nonprofit or an organization, our local Tulsa Transit, our Economic Development Authority, our ESL providers from the Tulsa Community College. And so we convened to have a series of discussions, like quick, couple meetings where we decided what was the solution that we need. And everything from let's get a new bus route to, can we get a van pool, carpools? But what we landed on was helping individuals get driver's licenses and access to cars. And so we were able to identify that need. And at the same time, there was a funding opportunity from a private foundation that was supporting efforts across various cities. And so we applied and got that grant, and we're in the process of implementing all of that right now, including establishing a car loan fund, zero interest car loan fund, in partnership with foundation and some of this other private foundation money as well. And so that's just one example of one challenge that was a complex issue issue. We couldn't kind of tackle every transportation issue, but we felt like, what we had within our partners, we should focus on the driver's licenses and the access to cars.
Thank you, Crystal. Fatima, coming back to you, you earlier mentioned, how has Merck responded to the evacuation since last August? My second question would be, what type of social service support has been offered, to the newcomers, and what connections have been made with legal services in the area?
So as I mentioned, that Merck is over the years has really have become an ecosystem. So that means that the Afghans that came to Maine, they had access to all of the service that was already available and they were working through. But I will just name a few of them. I mean, it's really important for people to understand that resettlement doesn't happen the moment a person arrives. Resettlement happen over the years, period of. So for people, for example, I just met someone who during the chaos of all of what was happening, so she could only bring one of her children and the rest are still in Kabul. So how can we just say that she is resettled here? Still she's just missing. So things like that. But also one of the other thing is, as I mentioned, we're a very small state, so that means public transportation is almost non-existent. So we at Merck, I work closely with multiple of our funders. So we got funding to basically help all Afghans who are in Maine, who are capable of driving or wanted to drive, to get driver license. And we also got laptops so the state of Maine is one of the states, I think, that it is under our state law that all kids have access. They get free computers from their school when they're going to public school. So that majority of our Afghan parents didn't have their computers, either they left behind or they never had it. So we did got them computers so they can just work with their children. We also unfortunately, we are one of the states that most refugees, even refugees or asylum seekers, are not covered through Maine care. That means that after 9 months of being in Maine, they would have lost their health care, so we were closely working with our partners in the healthcare system. So now they have not just access to just a visiting doctor, but also, which is different, having dental and eye care. So they do have all of that. And talking about work, we have been closely working. I mean, Maine is a very aging state, so we do need, there's a lot of, we need health science everywhere, but it's not just that. We want people to have a good job, a job that they can grow roots in America. It's not just a job that they can survive. So one of the things we did, we just went through everyone, asked them what they were doing in Afghanistan, what they wished to do. So we worked closely with our universities to enroll people who wanted to change their career. And one of my favorite things is that now we have a group of Afghan who were pilots at the army bases in Kabul. So now they're going to become commercial pilots. So they're going to pilot schools, and I'm very proud of them. There's 7 of them. So a lot of those small little things here and there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatima. David, you're an individual who has a vast amount of experience working with immigrants, and earlier you answered our question on how the state and organizer have been responding to the need of the housing crisis in California, and how you will continue to respond to that. My next question to you is that what have you as a community navigator been hearing? If you can please, tell us more about that.
Of course. Thank you very much, dear colleagues, and Navi John. Everybody brought up a lot of valid points. And I just want to point out, before I go ahead and answer the question, that the journey for people that resettle, in this case, Afghans, of which I am one, and I am an immigrant to this country, a refugee as a result of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. It's a long process. And it requires a lot of resilience, and it requires a lot of patience, and it requires a lot of learning new things, new rules, new regulations. Trying to wrap your arms around this and make sense of it is not always the easiest thing to do. So, as navigators, as being someone that has been on both ends, on the advocacy end, we were also partaking in advocating with our Congress people here last week, through We Are All America and Shirla. And I'll just kind of cut to the chase and bring this a little bit more grassroots. As navigators, we basically have our hands on the pulse of what goes on. And so the problems with our newly arrived guests is that we have people of different experiences. We have people, as my colleague Fatma John mentioned, that had been pilots in Afghanistan. This is one end of the spectrum. They had been educated and certainly had, formal schooling, so they were doing what they were doing. On this side of the spectrum, we have a lot of people that don't have the language skills and don't have the necessary skills in order to straight away, blaze a path and connect with jobs, and then ultimately with integration. So since we're dealing with a vast number of people with different capabilities, it's very important that the basic needs are taken care of. To that end, we strive, as do all my colleagues, to make sure that they have the basics. So we advocate, we help, we connect, we fill out forms, we do applications for their housing. We assist in enrolling their children in school. So much as it takes as far as language, translation, whatever it takes, we try to do that. And obviously, it takes a village to do all of this. So we reach out, we make coalitions. There's a lot of kind Afghans. I wish I could share the same resources with you in Maine. California is very well structured because of our proximity, because of being California. They're always a step ahead. And so we are facing challenges that are going to set people on their path for the long run. This is something that the population deals with, are a lot of unknowns. But as the year has gone on, or almost a year for some, over a year for others, it's becoming a little bit more, they're coming to the realization that there are a lot of things I can do for myself. We can do for ourselves. We are a very strong advocator for this, because nobody's going to scratch you back until you do it yourself. You find a wall or a branch or something to do it. You're on your own. The sooner you realize that, the sooner you're able to thrive. And if there is a place on earth right now during these times that you can still thrive, it's the United States. So we try to basically give them the guidance from the base up to find a path that they can use and go forward with clarity. We share information with them as it becomes available to us from resettlement agencies, from the government, from many different partners. But as it pertains and affects their lives, we share that with them. We do this through various orientations, sometimes through phone calls, sometimes we meet them at job fairs. And again, the infrastructure in California is stronger, so we have these support bases. That doesn't mean we don't advocate for it, that we don't push for it. It's a lot of work because there are many different populations that have issues that need to be addressed. There are fellows from Ukraine, as an example. So our advocation is centered around helping all populations. In this particular instance, it's the Afghans that are in most need, so we do that. But the attitude that we have, all of us, is the trail that we are now clearing and moving forward with is going to be easier for the ones that come behind us, the populations that come behind us. So that's very important. And bringing it down even a level lower, a lot of times, you guys, it's just listening to their grievance, to their issue, to their problems, 10 o'clock at night, 9 at night, 11 at night. So, you guys know this is a 24-hour clock ticking for us. So we try to be available for them. We try to support them in the best way that we can with clarity. Another result of a mass evacuation, such as Operation Allies Welcome, is that people try to stick together because they're an unknown territory. And so as a result of that, you have little groups and subgroups. And then, as we know, telephones, people have telephones, and then they start to make groups and threads and things of that sort. What I'm trying to get at is there's a lot of false information out there that one Afghan tells the other. I'm not going to look for the reason. That just a lot of bad information out there. We as navigators, as people that do this type of work, are extremely focused on putting an end to that and trying to let them know that the rules and regulations of this country apply to everybody. You have rights, your kids have rights, your family has rights, animals have rights here. Everyone is privy to rights. So giving them a solid foundation on which to build. This was something that was absent in Afghanistan, unfortunately. And I'll tell you this because I spent the last 20 years mostly in Afghanistan from 2019, and before I was there the majority of the year. So what I'm basically saying is every one of you guys is so instrumental and so helpful for the advocation. If we make a difference in one family's life, in one person's life, that could translate to a minimum of family of 4. So giving them the proper guidance and giving them the information that they need, calming their nerves, letting them know that you need to sort of jump on this wagon with me. We're all going to walk to water. We're going to find it. And then each one of us is responsible for drinking our own fill. That is the attitude that we try to have with folks. That doesn't mean that we don't support. That doesn't mean that we're tough. And it's not even tough love. It's just making sure that they have a solid footing on which to stand and move forward. There's so many different pieces, you guys. There are more moving pieces than a Swiss watch here. And every one of us makes one of those little cogs work. And so at the end of the day, we all make a difference. But we have to stay united and keep advocating. And I believe, Muhammad John, to just kind of drive that home one more time, the Afghan Adjustment Act, ladies and gentlemen, is the key that will make things a lot easier for us going forward. So thank you very much. I know I was long-winded. Back over to you, Navi John, and thank you.
Thank you. You know, I think all the NGOs such as CHIRLA, Merck, American Immigration Council, and cities are doing a wonderful job, you know, and welcoming the new you know, Afghan immigrants here. As I said, that they have made life for us very, very easy, and I thank you, all of you guys and everyone that has been working tirelessly to make the newcomers' life easy. And I would, you know, as a last question, this is, you know, open for anyone. What call to action do you have for our audience if anyone want to go on and answer that question?
With everybody's permission, I'd just like to say that there is something that every individual can do. And even if it's a small gesture, we should do it. Just keeping the chain together, keeping connected, and keeping united, and making sure that we give the information and that we support them in every possible way that we possibly could. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't cut anybody off. I apologize.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add, for those of you who are interested in getting engaged around some of the mobilization and organizing around the Afghan Adjustment Act, highly encourage you to go to evacuateourallies.org. Again, that's evacuateourallies.org. There you'll find information and ways to get involved in part of this movement to pass the Afghan Adjustment Act. Thank you.
And I'll add that.
And I was just going to add that. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
So I'll just quickly add to build on David a little bit that there are a couple of things, especially if you're in a city and you're not sure if your city has an office for immigrant and refugee affairs. Just reach out and see if there are some efforts or an individual that can help connect you. Volunteers are needed from everything from, you know, helping someone navigate a city service or a benefit to driving. And so there are, every little thing helps. And so, you know, starting with your municipality is a great start. And then for many, I'm sure are already connected, but maybe some don't know, we're heading into Welcoming Week in a couple weeks. And that is a national celebration and campaign to welcome our immigrant and refugee newcomers in all cities and connecting them and just building on building on, you know, the diversity of our communities. And there are events happening, and maybe you can host one as part of Welcoming Week. It's something that is celebratory and much needed.
And then I'll add, you know, the Afghan Adjustment Act is a federal policy issue, but you can also get involved at the state or the local levels with policymakers in those arenas, whether it's, you know, things like housing policy or increasing funding and access for transportation. Fatima mentioned how in Maine, you know, certain individuals are not eligible for Maine care. So, you know, contact your legislators about that. But just be proactive about outreach, whether it's for the Afghan Adjustment Act or other policies that would improve the lives of our Afghan friends.
Fatima Jan, do you want to add something?
I think everyone summarized it very well. I would just say that again, I just remember that adjustment, the Afghan Adjustment Act is very important, especially for people who still have families. And the state of Maine, one of the things that we realized that up to 40% of the new arrivals have applied for asylum. That means a very long path. So we are already too late to help these families, but we have to do something for them. So I would just emphasize that. And then Tobin mentioned for a lot of it, I think one of the things that is hard for a lot of new immigrants. So if they are resettled in different states, the information can be very confusing, as David mentioned. So just try to remember that when they are reaching out, and again, do a lot at the local level. So a lot of these policies really start at the local level, and then we can move it on the federal level. Thanks.
Thank you, Fatima. Well, those folks who are watching us live, if you are interested in receiving an email follow-up with the link to this recording, as well as getting updates from us, please sign up for our list server. You can register by clicking in the link in the chat box. And thank you for joining us. Thank you to our wonderful and special guests, and we hope to see you in our future Refugee Matters series. Thank you, everyone. Bye.